Hi everybody, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is MC Brown, I'm VP of Product here at Continuent, and welcome to our webinar for today. Today's topic is we're going to have a look at the new Continuent 1 year later, what we're doing, what we've done, what's next. Few points of admin before we get started. So this webinar is being recorded and it will be available on the website immediately after this broadcast. You'll be able to watch it back whenever you like. You can also ask questions at any time. There's a little question session on the right-hand side under your GoToWebinar control panel. You can ask a question there. Hopefully we will have some time at the end to be able to answer some questions. I'm sure a few people will have some things that they want to ask as we go through. With that little bit of administration out the way, let's get started. So today what I want us to talk about, right, we've had a really important year, right? So we wanted just to communicate back out to our customers and interested parties exactly what we've been doing. Let's just kind of have a review of what we've done for the year and indeed what's coming up, right? So we're going to have a look at the kind of things that we've already achieved, and we have done a huge amount this year. We're also going to have a look at what we're going to try and achieve in the next year, and again, there's some fun stuff. If people have been to some recent conferences and shows, hopefully you will have seen that. We're also going to, try and think about what are the things we could be doing better, are the things that you guys would like us to be doing that we're not doing. But fundamentally, this all comes back to, a year ago, in fact, almost exactly a year ago to the day, Continuent, the new Continuent came out. We came back out of VMware. So you can continue, consider this as like a Continuent, the company 2.0. We came out of VMware. Obviously, we had a lot of things that we needed to get sorted. We're setting up a new company. We're getting everything organized. We also, obviously, aside from setting up the company, there's all of the setting up of all of the things that goes along with that. And then there's all of the administration and the product, and making sure that we actually continue to deliver and provide the stuff that we want to you. And we made a lot of changes while we were going through that process. So primarily, new Continuent, was a new Continuent. Continuent as a company has now been around for 14 years. We kind of went into VMware, we've come out again with the same team. We are the same group of people that have been here. I mean, myself, I've been at Continuent now almost 5 years. Some of us have been here from the start of Continuent. So it's the same people you're all familiar with. You all know who we are. We've also done a couple of other things. Obviously, we created a lot of internal things in order to be able to support our work. We've had to create, a new QA environment, a brand new build environment, and we've also done other things. Hopefully, some of you will have seen the new website. We've got a nice new website with new information about our products, new information about what it is we do, and we're obviously adding and expanding to that. We've added some new white papers, so there's a really excellent, detailed technical white paper on how the Tungsten Replicator works. It's a fantastic document and worth a read if you're interested in the replicator and what it does. I can tell you it's a good read. It's written by me, so it is really fantastic. I would recommend it to everybody. But we also made some changes to the way in which we wanted to work with our customers, and this was critical to what we did when we came out. We were aware of the fact that something, particularly our communication with our customer and the way that we were doing releases, was not always effective, not always the best way of doing it. And so what we did is we wanted to change that. So the first thing that we did is we changed our release schedule, and I'm pleased to say that this year we have almost entirely been able to keep to this new schedule. We have a new release that has come out every 6 weeks, so we're regularly coming out with new updates. And that is a mixture of new features. We're trying to come out with a new feature release every 3 months, and we're trying to come out with new feature stroke bug fix releases basically every 6 weeks, and then every 12 months we'll have a major new release. Now, at the beginning of this year, what we did is we launched our new 5.0. In fact, we released what we actually called a 5.01 because there was a 5.0 while we were at VMware. We will be releasing a brand new major version at the end of this year, more of which I will tell you about later in the presentation. We've also tried to increase the way that we communicate just generally with our customers and our clients, potentially interested parties, right? I'm trying to regularly give a product management newsletter, let you know what it is we're working on, let you know what it is that we've been doing. That's something that we are Still refining, still improving on. Hopefully that will, now things are beginning to kind of settle down and we're getting ourselves into a rhythm. That's something that we will be doing a bit more regularly. And we've also changed and increased our training and our webinar sessions, of which this is obviously one. We now have our training Tuesdays, we now have our webinar Wednesdays, and those basically every week we have one presentation that provides that information. Hopefully all of this is improving just the way in which we communicate with you guys so that you know exactly what it is we're doing, what it is we're planning, and what it is we are hoping to achieve as we go through. And when it comes to products, you know, we have done a huge amount this year. You know, if we have a look at our clustering first, we have done a massive amount in order to try and improve the clustering product. And mostly it has been about bug fixes and stability for the moment. And that is, you know, huge number of bugs, huge number of improvements, particularly in the way that we do deployments, particularly when it comes to secure installations. We want to make it as easy as possible for you to do a deployment, because obviously that encourages you guys to use it. But also we wanted to make it much, much easier to do certain things. So we've tried to improve and simplify the security deployments of our clustering product. We've also done things like we've enabled bridge mode on the connector by default. Now the great thing about bridge mode is that obviously that brings with it some performance enhancements. It does change the way that we are able to support certain other areas of functionality, but on the whole, most of our customers have preferred the bridge mode. It's much, much quicker and improves the performance noticeably on a connector within the cluster without losing you know, the key functionality, which is obviously our high availability, our ability to spread that load around the cluster. We've also improved our platform support. We are trying to get better with this. We know that at the moment our platform support is something that we don't actually describe very, very heavily, but we have added support for CentOS 7. We have added support for the newer versions of Debian and Ubuntu, and we are actually testing on them. I mean, I myself have started testing on 17.10 for Ubuntu, which obviously just came out this week, and I'm happy to say I've not yet hit a problem. But you know, we are improving on that, and we have also changed the way that you know, we do deployments. When we do those staging deployments, for those of you that have used the staging deployments, we know there was a lot of pain around the net SSH, and we wanted to improve that as well, and that we've done. And then if we have a look at the replicator, now obviously the replicator is part of our Tungsten clustering offering. So everything that I mentioned here is something that ultimately gets reflected back up into our clustering as well. But there have been some huge improvements to our replicator. First and foremost, we have extended and improved our Oracle extraction. So we added new Oracle extraction last year. We have improved on that. We are improving on that still. I've been working on that just this week, actually, to improve the way in which we deploy our Oracle extraction. We also added some new appliers earlier on this year. So we added Kafka, Cassandra, and Elasticsearch back in version 5.2 in July. Those are new appliers that had been asked for by customers, and indeed we're working with customers right now on getting those into their hands and getting live replication running. I think it's really, really important as we go forward. We know that the replicator is a really, really useful tool, particularly in those heterogeneous deployments, to be able to move that data around to different targets. And so, you know, adding new appliers and ultimately adding new extractors is something that we will continue to do. We've also tried to improve other areas of the replicator and indeed the clustering as it comes along. So we have changed things like TREP-CTL. We've got you know, a great new set of features into TREP-CTL. We have performance monitoring built into TREP-CTL now. We have simplified status monitoring built into TREP-CTL, and an easier method for finding and identifying those large transactions as they go through the replicator. We've also done some important work in trying to improve our filter environment, because again, we know that this is something that is really, really important and really, really useful for people. We are trying to lay the groundwork for some critical improvements to the way the filtering operates. So that's kind of what we've done. Personally, I think we've actually achieved a lot. I mean, it has only been a year. 12 months is not a long time, but we have done all of these things, you know, as well as obviously, as I said, all of those things that go behind the scenes. We've also had, you know, plenty of other things that obviously happen within any typical company. We've had a lot of internal meetings. We've had a lot of opportunities to discuss and decide what it is we're going to be doing in the future. And that kind of led us to an interesting process of identifying what new things we can add. Obviously, all of this comes back down to customers and what our customers want. But I think it's always important to also kind of look ahead and think about the problems and the issues that exist that our customers either aren't hitting yet, or we know they may hit within 6 months of us talking and discussing with them, but they may not necessarily be aware that they're going to hit that yet. So, looking a little bit ahead to what we're planning in terms of the product, let's go back. Let's have a look at the clustering first. Our big thing before the end of this year is to release a brand new version 6 of both of our products. And in the terms of the Tungsten clustering, the main feature that will come in that version 6 is a brand new deployment and installation and overall product for our multi-master, multi-site clustering. In fact, it's now actually got a new name. We just call it multi-master clustering. And the main change that we are going to be adding into this new clustering is we are going to add a simplified method of having a look at that multi-site, multi-master cluster and going, okay, what's going on? Is this thing up to date? Is everything running okay? Can I tell that everything is running? And the key element to that, for those that know the way that it operates, is instead of having separate replicators that replicate between the individual clusters within the sites, those replicators now form part of the overall cluster. So if you go into like CCTRL, you're going to be able to go into CCTRL and you will see a single view that will tell you exactly what's going on across the entire multi-master environment. You're going to know whether your each of your clusters in each of your sites are up to date, and whether they're also up to date with each other, all within that single one interface. That also obviously means that it will be much, much easier to deploy. And again, we know that this is a pain point for customers, and we know that this is something that they frequently hit that is ultimately going to add problems and overheads from the perspective of trying to get that deployed quickly and effectively. So that changes too. I can say that, you know, at the moment we're going through final testing now. Obviously, this thing will be released before the end of this year. So you know, this new set of functionality, it is working really well. I'm particularly impressed at how easy it is to deploy. You know, it is literally almost as easy now to deploy a multi-master cluster as it is to deploy a single cluster within a single site. Right? It is as simple as specifying the list of hosts and specifying the list of hosts and the sites that they are associated with. And you know, we see that as significant. We have actually been working on that for most of the year. So you know, we are obviously trying to get that sorted and out. We're also obviously overall going to make it easier to manage and easier to monitor, obviously, because it's all in the same place. That's going to be much, much simpler for us to achieve. And then in the background, what we're ultimately adding into this particular element as well, into the clustering and also into the replicator, is we are starting to add in the functionality that will make it easier to manage larger groups of these clusters. You know, we know that we have customers who have you know, multiple clusters and sometimes you know, multiple multi-site, multi-master clusters, and they want to be able to easily monitor and determine whether those sites are up and running. We're going to make that much, much easier. We're going to make that possible through our REST API. So the REST API will be will provide you with all of that information. It will also enable you to provide to do a lot of configuration and other elements. So you're going to be able to configure and control the cluster through that same REST API. But obviously, ultimately, this is something that will provide us with a lot more flexibility in the future as we start deploying into different environments. Off of the back of that, obviously, we will also get improved monitoring. One of the things that we are trying to work on right now is trying to get a better understanding of what happens within a multi-master cluster as a whole. And by that, I mean we want to be able to, we've now got this single view that tells you if everything is up to date. We want to try and improve that a little bit further and try and identify things like performance bottlenecks, try and identify whether any performance or other issues that you have within your cluster is something that is related to the connector, or maybe it's related to the way that your system is organized and deployed. We're hoping to be able to get that information out in a more effective method so that we can advise you better. And again, some of that will come out of the REST API, some of that will come out of the other work that we're doing, including some work that obviously we're also doing as part of the replicator. So let's look at the replicator and what we're doing. Again, we understand with the replicator that people are using it for a whole array of different things. Some people are using this for big data loading. Some people are using this to support their website. Some people are using this to support their just their general distribution of data around. Obviously, adding things like Kafka makes it very, very much easier for us to fire and distribute information into other places that people are using. If you go back, I did a webinar a few weeks ago about loading into Kafka and actually what happens with that and what you can do with that. You can see that it makes a lot more sense for you to be able to offload this from your application and instead put that into a separate replication that is then fired off your database. You still get the transactional consistency, you still get everything else. So adding that stuff into the replicator is critical. And ultimately, that also means we want to make it easier, obviously, to get this data into different targets. And again, we know we have people who want to replicate into a bunch of things that we don't yet support. So we will be adding more appliers rather. So things that we are adding and working on at the moment, we are working on MemSQL. And MemSQL is a great in-memory MySQL compatible database that people are using for kind of analytics and counters and live access to statistical information that they wouldn't otherwise get. Then we're going to add things like Couchbase, which is often used in a similar way, in a similar functionality. And InfluxDB, which is obviously a time series database, which is going to make it much, much easier for you to aggregate and combine information. We're also going to be adding, a native Hadoop applier, which is going to be a huge improvement in terms of compatibility for those people who are currently using our Hadoop applier that uses backloading. Backloading is still going to be really, really important if you're loading large quantities of data. If you're feeding slightly smaller quantities of data, but you want that live imported into Hadoop, the JDBC applier may be more useful to you. And then we're also going to add PostgreSQL. Actually, something that we had in the product a long, long time ago. For those that are not familiar with the history of Tungsten Replicator, actually the replicator was compatible with Postgres a long, long time ago before we moved over to being a MySQL-focused environment. So we're going to be adding that functionality back because we know, again, people are using Postgres. We're also planning on adding extraction for Postgres as well. So that's something that will enable us to take data out. And we're also looking at other ways in which we can get data out of existing databases and indeed imply it into other databases without us necessarily having to do a huge amount of work to achieve that. Then other items, obviously we've got things like the REST API. REST API for the replicator will enable us a very, very easy method to set up replication and also to monitor it. And then obviously improvements, those filters I mentioned earlier, we're adding extended filtering. Some of that is just to improve compatibility of our heterogeneous deployments. Some of that is to add functionality, again, that we know people have been asking. People like data obfuscation and hiding. You want to be able to apply your data into big data, but you want to strip out, credit card numbers or, personal identification information, addresses, telephone numbers, that kind of thing, we'll be able to pull out. And then obviously, just generally, we are trying to improve the way the replicator gets data into big data and analytics, and that means trying to fill a gap where we currently have we're extracting live data. Remember, we are at replication, and so we're therefore replicating live transactions from your source database. But we know that some people want to be able to embed other information in a way that maybe you wouldn't be familiar with doing with something like an ETL environment. So those are all of the things that we're adding to the replicator. These are the highlights. And I say highlights, these are the highlights of the things that I want to talk about right now. There are more things that we're planning. We have a big long list of things that we want to be able to add. And some of the things will seem minor and will be huge, and some of the things will be huge, but actually seem relatively minor in the big scheme of things, such is the way that software works. It all depends on how you're operating. You know, please keep an eye out. You know, we will obviously have new webinars and stuff that is coming on. Then in terms of additional things that we're working on, so I talked about this at Pecona Live Dublin earlier on this year. We are adding a brand new product, and that brand new product is Tungsten Backup. And the whole purpose of Tungsten Backup is to fill that gap that we know many customers have into their existing production environments, which is how do they handle backups? You know, lots of people handle backups in a variety of different ways. They replicate data to a separate host and back up that. They do, you know, if they're in a MySQL environment, they're using extra backup, you know, or maybe they're using MySQL dump or file system snapshots. All of these different things work together, but often there isn't a unified solution. And also often there isn't a solution that offers, you know, the benefits of being able to do a full restore in the event that you need to be able to, you know, maybe fire up a new host ready for replication. You want to do that provisioning first, or maybe you're doing a data recovery process and you want to do that. But obviously there are different methods for different reasons for why you might want to do that. You might want to be able to restore a point-in-time version. So maybe you wanted to restore the version of your data as it was operating, you know, before the end of quarter, for example. So then you're looking at something which is not, you know, a physical backup. You then want a logical backup. Maybe you only want to restore a bunch of tables. You don't want to restore everything. Or maybe what you want to be able to do is you want to be able to restore a bunch of tables to the end of the month, but you don't want to restore it back into MySQL. You want to be able to restore that back into Redshift because that's where you want to do your analytics. This is the gap that Tungsten Backup is designed to be able to solve, right? We will be able to handle the ability to do full restores, full backups. We'll also handle the logical style of being able to take out, you know, individual tables and databases. And we'll also, you know, be able to do this all automatically for you. So you're going to be able to sit there and specify, you know what, I want to be able to restore within 4 hours, or I want to have, you know, a backup where I can go back to a specific point in time over the last 3 months. These are things that you're going to be able to configure within your Tungsten Backup, and Tungsten Backup will handle all of that. And it will handle it automatically. It will do the automated process, and it will also handle the things like the restore and producing you a validated backup. And finally, and perhaps the most important thing, and I have to say that having spoken to a lot of people at Pecona Live, I was quite surprised about this. It will hopefully solve the problem of, is my backup valid? You know, we had a big discussion about the best way of actually validating whether a backup was going to work. You know, you create a backup, do you know that you're actually able to restore it? You know, again, Tungsten Backup is going to handle that because it's going to be doing the validation for you in the background all of the time. So Tungsten Backup, we're really excited about. It's something that we're working on already, and it's something that ultimately we will be working on from the beginning of next year in a more determined fashion. Obviously, once we've got our current new products and new releases for the end of this year out of the way. We're also going to be taking our Tungsten Connector, which is currently part of our clustering product. We're going to be able to take that out and make that a standalone connector. And the whole purpose of that standalone connector is to be able to take that that functionality that we have there, which is a very, very highly configurable and high performance you know, proxy, and be able to use that and make use of that. So we're going to be able to have all of the stuff that you would normally have within the connector as it stands within a cluster, but you're going to be able to use that outside of a typical cluster. So maybe you've got just a standard native MySQL replication that you want to be able to handle, or maybe you have a bunch of Oracle servers and you have replication between them and you want to be able to sit in front of it, or indeed Postgres servers and you want to be able to sit in front of it. This is what you're going to be able to do with the Tungsten Connector. And perhaps more importantly, with the Tungsten Connector, you're going to be able to still have some of that functionality that you're familiar with. So you're still going to have the load balancing, you're still going to have the packet inspection, you're still going to get that functionality, but you've now got it without the full cluster so that you can use it against different targets. And then, you know, one last item. I know I've got a bunch of questions here that are filling up, so I will answer those in a moment. The last element, I talked a lot about the REST API. We think the REST API is going to be really, really important as we go forward. We are trying to improve the way in which we can deploy our product in terms of our cloud environments and how that will operate. And we also know that if we develop the REST interface in the right way and get that API as correct as we possibly can, it gives us the opportunity in order to develop a very, very good UI on top of that. Because once we've got a REST interface, it becomes very, very easy to get a list of all of the hosts, determine how you want to control them, you know, start, stop, restart replication, perform switches in a cluster, failovers, etc. All of that functionality will be available once we've got a nice, simple REST API in order to work with. And so these are the things that we are looking at down the line of what we're going to be producing next year in terms of new features and functionality, building on the work that we've been doing. Some of it this year, and some of it will obviously come within you know, the work that we're going to be doing next year. So hopefully that has given you a taste of, you know, what's coming up. The next year is going to be busy. We fully expect to be keeping to that same schedule, right? We're going to keep to that schedule of, you know, a new release every 6 weeks, a new feature release every 3 months. We will have another big, you know, release in terms of features and functionality at the end of next year. Obviously, we've also got new products coming along. So, you know, big, exciting year to come up. And hopefully, you know, in a year's time, I'll be sitting here telling you about all of the fun things that we've been doing, you know, for our second year of the new Continuent 2.0. So with that, what could we improve on? So I know I've got a bunch of questions. I am going to do my best to try and answer some of these questions. So the update to V6 from V5 is not going to be simple to do if you're already running a multi-master setup. Correct. Can you explain how the install and update will work? So the simple answer is I can't give you a simple answer of exactly how that will work. It will be different, and we are trying to make it as seamless as possible. But yes, it is a completely different deployment model. It's certainly not going to be a case of a TPM update and everything will be handled, because we have to effectively remove the old standalone replicators and instead put in place these new ones that are, excuse me, embedded as part of the cluster. I honestly, at the moment, I can't give you a more definite answer. We are trying to make it as simple as possible, but the reality is that it may be too complicated to make it to do it effectively in a single process, and so it may be a case of us, you know, taking a cluster down and reinstalling the newer version over the old one while we disable the replicators, which again is something that we do with the current solution. We would just be doing it with this new version. That's as much as I can say at the moment. We're still trying to pin down exactly how that is going to work, but we will try and make it as easy as possible. It will be very hard to pitch for the downtime, and we will try and minimize the downtime as much as we possibly can. The great thing about the new solution is that because it's all embedded, and because we have these new tools available that allow us to set our position in terms of the replication, actually recording the position and installing the new one is something that does happen relatively quickly. Like I said, we are still working on the finer point of that upgrade. As soon as we have more information available, we will obviously do it. There'll certainly be a webinar that will make it easier. But yeah, you know, we will obviously be encouraging us to produce as simple an upgrade procedure with as little downtime, and indeed no downtime if we can do it at all, as we push it out. We will be supporting V5 for the foreseeable future. We are supporting version 5. We do actually have an announcement coming on exactly how that support for V5 will work, but for the moment, yeah, at the moment you will have the version 5 support through more or less until the end of, certainly until the end of next year. So that's not a problem. Yes, please get in touch. Oh, they're all from the same person. Okay, right. has there been any progress in adding automatic resumption of replication during data conflicts, i.e. skiffle conflicts? Yes. So thank you for this question. Yes, so conflict resolution is something that we do actually have on our list of things that will be addressed next year. We have actually come up with a plan of how we will enable this. And the current thinking is that obviously you will have a configuration that will enable you to specify on a schema and/or table level what you want to do on detecting and then operating on conflicts. And basically, it will be a case of did the apply work? No, it didn't. What do I want to do with this data for this particular table or schema? Do I want to say, well, I know it's come from this cluster or this host, so I know it's going to be the right version, or do I want to track it via a version number or a date or time? Or do I want to be able to like force it through? All of those things are available and will be possible with the new conflict resolution that will go into the replicator. Obviously, once it's in the replicator, it will be part of the clustering. I am in the process of writing up a definition for how this works, and probably the best thing to do is to keep having a look at our blog. I actually have a blog at the moment, halfway in progress, that is going to describe how this is going to operate, because I was hoping to get feedback and information. So please keep looking out for that. Hopefully that will be out soon in the coming weeks. Is there an estimate for when Tungsten Backup will become available? It will be available within the first half of next year, is what I am going to commit to right now. And it will be standalone. And if you have a look back here, Tungsten Backup will be free of charge, right? It will be a standalone product. You'll be able to download it. You'll be able to use it. You'll be able to install it. There are going to be requirements, obviously, of how it's installed and where it's installed, but it is going to be a completely separate product from the rest of it. And you're going to be able to attach it to a standard MySQL or a standard Oracle, and we don't care whether that's cluster or replicator already enabled. You just point it at that source database and it handles the rest of it. What is the release date of Tungsten Backup? So same question. First half of next year is what I'm committing to right now. We will have the new version of Tungsten Backup out. And again, keep an eye on the blog. I am working on a bunch of blogs at the moment. We've come up with these new plans. I want to get input. I want to get information from you guys. So I am going to be describing some of the functionality and some of how this stuff works. I want to get this out there, and I want you guys to be able to tell me whether that fits and whether I've missed something in terms of it. So keep an eye on the Continuent blog. If you're going to go to continuent.com/blog, you'll get access to that information. But yeah, first half of next year, we will have the new version of the first version of Tungsten Backup out. So. Hopefully that's answered most of your questions. Obviously, we're slightly over time now. One last question, which is really important here. When are you guys going to support data types for MySQL 5.7? So we actually are finalizing the internal testing right now for the new data types, primarily JSON, because we know that's the one that a lot of people are using. It is kind of going through testing and QA right now. We want to get it right. Obviously, we try and avoid corrupting data whenever possible. So, look out for that. Hopefully, that will be part of our release that comes out, towards the end of the year. That will be part of the 6.0 release for the replicator. If I can get it in beforehand, so there is a 5.3.0, which is currently in production right now that we're trying to get out. 5.3.0 has loads of improvements more improvements to our Oracle extraction and deployment, but it also has a new heterogeneous DDL translation, which actually also works for homogeneous if you want to do clever stuff when you're doing DDL translation. So that's all coming out in 5.3.0. 5.3.0 is probably the middle of next month, which is November, isn't it? We are producing stuff all the time. We will do our best to get this stuff out there and make sure you guys are aware of it. So, okay, guys, we're a little bit over time now. I do just want to say, obviously, if you have any questions, please feel free to get in touch with us. Use sales@continuent.com. Go and read the documentation. Go and have a look at our Tungsten University channel. We are always adding more content to that. There's a great training session next week, which is, I think, is looking at backups, actually, strangely enough. So, you know, go and attend that next week. You know, if you have any other questions, please feel free to get in contact with me directly, mc.brown@continuent.com, or indeed any of the people who are on this slide here. They'll be able to forward and answer you any questions, and if they don't know the answers, they will know someone who does. Any more information, anything else you want to know, you know, please get in touch. This stuff only works, and indeed I strongly encourage, right? We need as much feedback as possible. We want to work with you guys to get you the product and the solutions that you need in order to solve the problems that you hit every day. So, you know, please get in touch. Please feel free to, you know, drop us an email if you want a phone call or want to discuss something in more detail. You know, please do get in touch. But that's it. Hopefully you've enjoyed the webinar. You've seen a little bit of what we've done, and hopefully have been suitably impressed by what we've achieved over the last year, which I think is a lot. You know, we've managed to cram a huge amount of stuff into a single year. We are hopefully about to cram a load of stuff into another upcoming year, and there'll be a bunch of stuff that we want to get you to see. So keep an eye on the blog. Get in touch with us if you feel the need, and hopefully we'll be doing some fun stuff, and we'll come back and do this again this time next year. Thank you very much for attending, everybody. Please keep a lookout. Please keep attending the webinars, keep attending the training. But thank you very much for your time today, and hopefully I will speak to you all very, very soon. Thank you and goodbye.